All right, right. Here we go, brothers and sisters. Um, Again, just a disclaimer. I'm not a teacher, not a preacher, not a pastor. I don't. This is not for any organization or a church. I'm not a member of any church. I'm just doing this in obedience to the Lord. He told me to just read the Word and how it ministers to me, just to share it. The reason because of that was for this is years ago. I used to work at a place called Calvary Chapel Downey in California, and I became a supervisor of daycare. 1,200 students. I had 16 employees under me. I was late 20s, and these 16 employees, 14 were females, all in their 30s, 40s, and 60s. Older than me, and I was a kid, new in the Lord. And I remember every day we get together before school started, and the girls did a devotion, and the ladies would ask me, David, brother, boss, why don't you do the devo with us? And I'm like, oh, what can I teach you women? You've been saved longer than me. She's like, no, we need you. You're a leader. I'm like, I'm new in the Word. I'm going through Bible college right now. And then my sister goes, David, you don't understand. We all go through the same thing. She goes, what you're going through, we go through also. It doesn't matter how long you've been with the Lord. This is just life. Just share with us what's going on in your life. And that always stood with me. So I do this to share with you how it ministers to me. Because if it ministers to me, it might minister to one of you who watch. That being said, we're in chapter 30, verses 9 through 24. And we see the war of the wombs, the battle of the babies, sisters being jealous and wanting to, outdo one another, and just like, oh yeah, well, he's with me, he's with you, and I got this many babies, you got that many babies. But we see the problem here is that Rachel was loved more than Leah, and Leah was not respected. Jacob did not respect her. No matter how many sons Jacob gave her, she still wasn't respected. They were married, they had a family, up to 6 sons. Eventually he gets a daughter, and we'll get there right now. But Leah was not respected. So here we go now. Kind of follow me on this. Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore. She already had 4 kids. So she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Soon Zilpah presented him with a son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, how fortunate I am. Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, what joy is mine. Now the other woman will celebrate with me, she says. What joy is mine? Now the other women will celebrate with me. Now, mind you, having sons was a good thing, because it's like, if you are a farmer and you got all these acreages, and the more tractors you got, the better. And the sons of tractors, they're workhorses, they're shepherds, they're farmers. Women don't work the field because, they're not strong enough, number one. Number two, it's dangerous out there. And so the more sons you have, the more rich you can become. One day during wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes growing in a field and brought them to his mother. Leah begged. He brought them to his mother Leah. So Reuben found these mandrakes and took them to his mama Leah. And it says here, Rachel begged Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But Leah angrily replied, wasn't it enough that you stole my husband? Now will you steal my son's mandrakes too? Rachel answered, I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight, and you give me some of the mandrakes. Doesn't this sound familiar? Jacob and Esau. Esau comes from the field. I'm dying, bro. I'm dying. Need some food, man. Hook a brother up. He's like, dude. He's like, come on, man. I'll give you my birthright. No, he's like, come on, please. I'm dying. And Jacob, the schemer, all right, sell me your birthright. Now here comes Rachel, the favorite of Jacob, coming to Leah. Hey, you got mandrakes. Hook a brother, hook a sister up. She's like, you stole my man. Now you want to steal my food? She's like, please, I'll give you my man. You know what I'm saying? Take him for the night. Take my night, woman. And she's like, bet. She's like, all right, mine. So that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him. She didn't even wait till he came home. She saw him. She ran to him. She's like, mine. You must come and sleep with me tonight, she said. I paid for you with some mandrakes that my son found. And you would think that Jacob would be like, no, it's Rebecca's night. Please stop. What are you doing? But he's like, okay. It says, so that night he slept with Leah, and God answered Leah's prayer. She became pregnant again and gave birth to a 5th son for Jacob. She named him Issachar, for she said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife. Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a 6th son for Jacob. She named him Zebulun, for she said, God has given me a good reward. Listen to this. She named him Zebulun and said, God has given me a good reward. For now, now my husband will treat me with respect, for I've given him 6 sons. Later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Oof. Again, after all these boys, Jacob did not respect her, and then God gave Jacob a daughter. I'm going to touch up on that in a minute. Finishes off. Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. God has removed my disgrace, she said, and she named him Joseph. For she said, may the Lord add yet another son to my family. Now, in the insert of my New King James Version, it says this about mandrakes. Let's jump back to that real quick. Mandrakes were considered an aphrodisiac and a stimulant for conception in some cultures. Rachel schemed to get the mandrakes, but Leah got pregnant. So often people scheme and plan, only to see the opposite of what they want. This happens when people seek to do their own will instead of God's. And it shows here that Leah understood the conception was of God, not of mandrakes, not of, the quiver being full and the timing of the moon and my ovarian cycle. Yeah, that's all a factor too. Yes, of course, those things they help. But I mean, conception is of God. Look at Mary and Jesus. Far too many people follow the stars and the moon and they believe that, and it's a worship, man. They worship the creation and not the creator. But let's get back to this. All right. So we see here that Leah knew that it was God who had control of the womb. Rachel's like, take my man. I want to get him all, wound up and rattled up and, ready to go, so give me the mandrakes and aphrodisiac. And Leah's like, take him, God will handle this. And God did. Now, let's jump on to this whole God gave Jacob a daughter. Daughters to fathers, how can I say this? God did that with me. I already had 2 sons, a daughter I didn't see, and my 4th child came along, which was my middle daughter, my first daughter from my wife, ex-wife now. And my marriage was struggling. There was just so much going on. I didn't really understand my wife at the time. I didn't understand her logic. I saw her family. I don't want to get too much into that. And it was hard to connect and commune with her train of thought. And I was struggling with a lot of stuff too. My family, just a lot going on too. Being in California, Los Angeles, it's heavy, man. It's a war zone. Not only is it spiritual, but physical, mental, emotional, financial. It's heavy. And then God gave me a daughter, my middle daughter. And it came out just like my ex-wife. Her train of thought, her ability physically, there were things that weren't. Well, my point is this. It was through that daughter I was able to understand my wife more. I was calling her my wife for now, but it's my ex-wife. Able to understand my wife more, and I was able to love my wife more because I was seeing a lot of similar traits and characteristics within my daughter that was within my wife at the time. I was able to understand her and love her and dwell with her. Of course, it wasn't easy. I mean, I still lacked understanding, but the point is God gave me a daughter to understand and begin to respect her in certain aspects because I understood her. It was easier to dwell with her when I started to understand her, look at her family and her parents and how she grew up too. I was like, oh, it made sense. Leah was not respected after 6 sons. And God, I'm going to give him a daughter. And you're going to see what happens to Dinah the next couple of chapters. And you see the wisdom of Jacob now. He's no longer a certain way. He outgrew certain things. When God gives a man a daughter, a man tends to wake up. When God gives a man a daughter, he tends to wake up. He becomes more soft. I used to be tough. I was Big Dave like you, and then I had my last daughter. And then she wanted Build-A-Bear. Oh, gosh, that was an experience for me. You talk about humbling me. And, if you've been a Build-A-Bear before, you got to go in there and you pick the animal, you pick the outfit, and then you got to put the organs aside. It's not just that easy. Got to give it a name, a birthday, an address, and you got to go and kiss the organ and spin the circle and all this stuff you have to do to put it inside this bear. And, it's for my daughter to do at the time. And she's like, all right, what do you want to name it? What do you want to name it? She's like, Dad, what should we name it? I'm like, it's your doll. And there's women there, okay? And they're just like, oh, and like, Dad, you kissed the heart. You kissed the heart, so Dad. And I'm like, and all the women are staring at me like, is this big guy gonna kiss this teddy bear's heart before they put it in? And are they gonna spit in a circle? And I'm like, oh my, it was humbling, but I did it. Not only that, as we were all done and all that, and I just wanted to go home. I felt stupid, I parked at the mall. It was at the mall, and I parked at the farthest end of the mall for some reason. Now here I am. I tell my daughter, "Here's your doll, and here's the box it comes with." And I hold her hand. She goes, "No, Dad, you hold the doll." So I put it in the box. She goes, "No, Dad, you hold the box and the doll." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "No." And I walk out the door. Here I am. My daughter's walking beside me. I'm not holding her hand. I'm holding her box. I'm holding her teddy bear. And all these cholos and cholos. Oh, what's up, big dog? Oh, so cute, home. And I'm like, man, shut up. I couldn't be tough no more. Meanwhile, I'm holding this stinking bear in this box, but my daughter was just looking at me just with her little lip, just so happy with those smoky, dreamy eyes. And I was like, oh, it broke me, man. Point is this, God gave Jacob a daughter. And you see how Jacob begins to grow in understanding and begins to grow closer to God. You might not have gotten much of this morning, but I have. You see people grow through these things. Leah's starting to understand now that conception is of God. Rachel's like, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to force these things. And it always backfires when you force things. You see two different sisters, two different perspectives. You see one trying to swindle, like her husband did with her brother. And it's just like, this morning it ministers to me because God's reminding me to just take a step back and let things play out. God is in control of all things. As long as I remain steadfast in Him, as long as I remain obedient to Him. Just this morning, I was like, Lord, teach me to understand You and Your Word, that I may reverence You and live a life that reverences You and honors You. As you see all this confusion going on, all this, the war of the womb, battle of babies, and my man, your man, our man, the man, it's just what a mess. You would think that this guy with 4 women would be living the dream. Man, it's just issue after issue. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and then God gave him a daughter now. After sleeping with all these, 4 women, He's like, I'm going to give you a daughter enough to teach you what love is. Instead of sitting there and bending these women over and taking and doing what you're doing, I'm going to give you a daughter to love and to hold and to cherish and to kiss and to raise and to compliment and encourage, to dwell with her in understanding so you can respect these women around you. Anywho, there's much more to say, brothers and sisters. It's going to be 13 minutes. Much love to you all. Peace be with you. May the joy, Lord, be your strength. And remember, choose wisdom over the world. God bless.